Outstanding. So for this month's talk, we are joined by Laura Peterson in her fabulous music studio. She's a principal product manager for CNN Digital's product performance team. She coaches leaders and teams in user problem framing, product discovery techniques, and test and learn mindset. Not only do Alex and I work with Laura at CNN, it happens that all three of us and Jody all worked at AOL back in the early mid 90s. It is a very small world indeed. Uh, Laura is an agile coach, a classically trained pianist. She lives in St. Petersburg, Florida with her husband, daughter, two cats, a lot of pianos, and a DeLorean. Someone please ask a question in chat about the DeLorean. Uh,
Let's talk about that instead. No.
Absolutely. This evening, Laura will be talking about creativity and innovation. So we're really excited to have you here, Laura. Thanks for
Oh,
thanks for
thank you so
joining
much.
us. I'm going to stop sharing my slides over here so that you can share yours.
Okay, let's do it. Great. Okay. Excellent. If we're good to go. Awesome. Everybody see that? Okay, great. And thanks for that wonderful lead-in, Jim. Note on the cat and the kid, if you hear them, we're doing the best we can. We have a small house, but hopefully they won't be too intrusive. But thank you so much for joining. Welcome to my talk on creativity, what it means, why it matters, and why it can be difficult, and how to nourish it. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for everyone zooming in. I'm excited to connect with you. And also thank you to Jim, Jody, and Alex, my friends and colleagues, for inviting me to speak about a topic that I find really important. And also just a note, shout out, congratulations on hosting such a long-standing, vibrant community. That's a tremendous accomplishment. Yeah, as Jim mentioned, more than 15 years ago, we were all working together at AOL. And I would never have expected to be where I am now at CNN. I lived much of my life in the DC area, but kind of made some changes in my life, lived in Berlin, lived in St. Petersburg now. I'm thrilled that my path has intersected with Jim and Alex's, with us working at CNN, and to have the opportunity to work with them again. But, think to yourself, where were you 5, 10, 15 years ago? How was the world different than it is today? Look at what's changed just in this year. That's part of the theme of what I'm going to talk about, journeys and wandering and the things that happen, and how we can't necessarily expect what happens, but we can use that to influence our creativity. So yes, I'm on the product performance team. I help teams understand more about their users. I aid in discovery techniques, coaching, optimization, team culture, stuff like that. And some of the mindsets and techniques that I'm going to be sharing are ones we use at CNN, but there's others that I've picked up elsewhere. Some of them may be familiar to you if you've ever been in a design sprint or something like that, especially directional feedback. And as Jim mentioned, I'm also a musician. And I just wanted to take a quick moment to share a little bit of my art with you, and talk about why it's important to be creative every day. Good for DC, right, in the summertime? Don't want to get into copyright trouble. So just a couple of little sparkle moments. How did that make you feel? The music, that's what matters. That's creativity. That's it makes us feel, it elicits an emotional response, not my playing, but the music itself. It's abstract, it's visceral, it's powerful, it's inexplicable. It can be mysterious, it can be accidental, unsettling, and risky. That's what you do as designers. That's what we're all doing as artists, as creative people. That's the essence of creativity, and it may also be why it's hard, and why sometimes people don't necessarily understand it. There might be some fear involved. It's so weird. How did she do that? I don't. That's. So I wanted to talk a little bit about whether it might be at risk and how we can nourish it, how we can make that happen more often in our work and our lives. I was inspired to give this talk on this theme from two colleagues. One, quite a number of years ago, I was coaching someone who was moving from a requirements analyst role, a lot of documentation, into more of like a product owner role where there was a little more flexibility, creativity, accountability. You know, you had to think about what the consumer wanted, the product, making decisions, and so forth. And I kind of forget the nature of what we were talking about at the time, but he said something to me that stuck with me. He said, "I'm not creative." And I thought, you know, and he was a fairly, you know, just a normal, average, typical person. But it's like he had this perception that he had to come to work dripping in paint with bits of drip cloth stuck to his clothes or something to earn the right to call himself creative. And I thought, yeah, that's the very nature of being human, is to be creative. We you know, the clothes we wear, the way we decorate our homes, the music we listen to, the art that we may or may not be making, the choices we're making as consumers, all of these things are free will and part of a creative impulse. So that was something I wanted to make sure no one ever said to themselves, if they're working at a product organization, "I'm not creative." Don't do that. You know, you're creative. And the second thing was a little bit, you know, I work in an organization where quantitative feedback is very important, quantitative testing. And there's no doubt, in the terms of the idea of the life cycle of a product idea, there's certainly a time for quantitative testing. But there was a deck that was shared that had some kind of persona demographic archetypes that sort of talked a little bit about different public responses to the coronavirus, different consumer choices. And you had the people that just huddled up in home and were perfectly happy and were streaming a lot and ordering stuff on Amazon and stuff and totally happy. Or there were people that were, you know, a little more, you know, philosophical about some of the things that were going on. They didn't necessarily take it so seriously. You had obviously frontline workers. And so these different archetypes and some of the perceptions and motivations and emotions they had and reasoning and all of that. So I think they had like 12 interviews that they used to compile this research. And then they had a couple of other research data points that they appended to it. So in terms of directional feedback, I think it was a great way to start, but somebody made a comment of, well, the sample size is too small. And I found myself thinking, like, are we being risk averse to the cost of any sort of directional initial hunch, you know, customer observation or impulse? So are we too quick to prove things like irrefutably? You know, we want certainty, but you have to have a moment, a space for that little hunch, that impression, which you then of course test. But as long as you're testing and getting actual user feedback, the sample size, that method shouldn't matter. So that's kind of what led me to think of all the ways that creativity is so important further upstream in that process. So one of the quotes that has always stuck with me, and actually have it right here, it's from an interview with Roland Mouret. I don't know if he's French or not, but he's a fashion designer. He designed the Galaxy dress for women. And he is the son of a butcher. And he was asked, "How did your father react when you said you wanted to become a fashion designer?" He said, he went crazy. On the one hand, he was proud of me for being creative, but on the other, he was also worried and anxious about me working in a completely unfamiliar world. Creativity is like magic. The naive find it absolutely amazing, and those in the know are fascinated by all the tricks. So that kind of stuck with me as well, this idea that we shy away from it sometimes. If it's so bold, we don't necessarily know what to do with it. But those are the types of things that make for great products. And he talks a little bit about when he's first draping a dress and getting the initial designs out in his mind. He says that if it's, you know, playing it safe is bad. If it feels right, if it's too comfortable now, it's wrong because you're playing it too safe. So a little bit about ideas. There's really not so many brand new ideas. Perhaps they really don't exist at all. It's much more common that you have existing ideas that are synthesized into the new idea. They may be disparate and disconnected until synthesized in an original way. There's some great examples, like the idea of a better Walkman led to the iPod. The idea of Lonnie Johnson is a aerospace and military engineer. He invented the Nerf gun and the Super Soaker out of some like military application that he was working on, you know, and he just, out of the proof of concept, it yielded this great idea. And Velcro. So some great ideas happen on a good walk. The Swiss inventor George Mistral was walking around in the Alps, and he got some burdock burrs on his socks. And upon closer examination, realized there was like this microscopic hook, attaching to the fabric. And he thought, well, so that's how Velcro was born. So there's a lot about like happy accidents, guided wandering, giving yourself space to wander. It's grounded essentially in non-linear thought. Another example, we take accidents, even things that are broken. In the Sun Studios in Memphis, Tennessee, you can see the first example, at least they purportedly the first example, but it happened around that time in the mid-50s, of a distorted record. So Ike Turner had an amp that on the way to the studio got damaged, and they propped it up with a piece of microphone. They popped up the sound cone with a piece of newspaper, and it buzzed and it rattled and it made this awesome fuzzy distorted sound. That's it. So it's like changing the context. Something that may by our definition seem broken or wrong or accidental might actually be the best idea ever if you just change the context a little bit. So, thinking a little bit about how we create space in our process for these types of things. We have to think about what's possible. Not just what's possible now, but what might be possible in the future. There's a wonderful documentary called General Magic. It came out in 2019, and it's about it's essentially a little spin-off of Apple soon after the Apple II. I'm going to be bad on the names. You guys would know more than I do, but the early desktop Macintosh computer that came out in like 1982 or whatever, they spun off a little group to research other types of technology and kind of like R&D stuff. And that team eventually had, a little early and before its time of mass adoption, a lot of great smartphone ideas. Think of like the Apple Newton of like 1994. They had a competitor product that they came up with on that. And in part of the interview, they interviewed some folks on the street just before they did the big product launch. And they were talking about, hey, wouldn't you love, this is like 1995, wouldn't you love to have a device that you could check your email and your stock prices and send images and everything else. And the people on the street are repulsed. It's like Big Brother. You're just describing this like dystopian, future to them. They're freaking out. No, I would hate that. No, they're all like New Yorkers and stuff. So they made it clear that was never going to be of value to them. Well, in like a decade, it becomes the iPhone, and that's the ubiquitous tech that we have now. So, great tying into Jeff Bezos has spoken a lot about guided wandering, but he talks about we have to do the things that customers don't know how to ask for. We have to tap into our own imagination and what's possible. This quote and then this quote here, they both come from his 2018 letter to the shareholders. You can just find it online, but it's a great read. There's a huge quote that I didn't want to include and read verbatim in a boring way without, but he talks about the importance at Amazon of having a builder's mentality, a fresh perspective, a fresh approach to things, a builder inventor's mindset. And it's something where they know that the path to success is anything but straight. I think that's the actual quote. There's a time in business to go from point A to point B and do that efficiently and well, and that is certainly inarguable. But at the same time, you also have to create space for some of that wandering where you kind of use gut and intuition and curiosity to come up with an idea, test it out, iterate. Maybe it fails. Maybe you go back to the drawing board and test it again and again and again, iterating and so forth. So he says the outsized discoveries, the nonlinear ones, are highly likely to require wandering. And the biggest recent example of this is the Alexa Internet of Things. That came from the ashes of the Amazon Fire Phone, which was a huge commercial failure, but they proved out their idea and they got all the infrastructure set up, and then suddenly they were able to pivot into the thing that was valuable and monetizable. So in essence, this is kind of the first part of my talk I wanted to impress upon you, but the idea that behind every Eureka moment, that aha, there's a lot of wandering, there's that slow hunch, there's that observation that's going on. So give yourself time to do that. And you know, if wandering has led you to a plausible impulse, which then you test out successfully in production in with your users and so forth, and you eventually get to user adoption, you don't necessarily have to defend that original sample size or method that got you to that impulse, as long as it's kicking off and you're then putting your testing into it in the right way. Don't worry too much about the methods in that upfront discovery part of it. So yeah, well, let's get a little bit more now into some of the techniques that help us be creative. John Cleese talks a lot about creativity. One of my favorite of the Monty Python group. He says that creativity doesn't have to be taught, it has to be liberated. And he speaks about your harebrain and your tortoise brain. Your harebrain being the quick, you know, obviously the fable of the tortoise and the hare, the harebrain that's kind of running quickly, multitasking, preoccupied with all that stuff. The tortoise brain is the really shy part of you that needs to be made safe to coax itself out of its shell and be at peace and calm, and then it can think with you. One random non sequitur, as I was preparing these slides in the speech, we had an actual soft-shell tortoise walk through our backyard here in Florida. So I thought that was like a great sign from the universe. It literally happened yesterday. So they're also apparently popular with gators. So hopefully we won't get an alligator following it. I don't want to know about the alligator brain. But yeah, that tortoise brain. So what do you do to make that tortoise brain safe? How do you connect with yourself and give yourself that moment to begin thinking in a more creative way? So one of the first things I like to think about is finding your flow. It's almost like if you're using a fountain pen and there's no ink in it, you have to kind of keep dabbing it in your inkwell and eventually write with it until you get that lovely, smooth, continuous, gliding on paper. It's different for everybody. Whatever works for you works, but some of the things that I found to be commonly helpful is connecting with your primal self. Go for a walk, like one of our attendees here. Lovely, you walk in the woods. It's kind of giving the harebrain something to do and to think about, so that your tortoise brain can come to the fore and begin to show itself. Get in nature. Do something. Go for a run. Go for a walk. Take a shower. Take a bath. Anything that, I get great ideas in the shower. So there must be something about standing up. Getting physical in that regard. Clearing away distractions, another thing that's important. And then working past some of your inner critic, those little naysayers that are, oh, that's a dumb idea. No, just put it to one side. Whatever may seem like a bad idea now may be an awesome idea with just a bit of context switching, just like we saw about the broken amp. So yeah, find your flow. And then when you're thinking in a product way, you want to capture some of the big ideas. If you're especially trying to communicate a problem that you're trying to solve, often we leap into solutioning, and it's important for you to think more about what problem you're solving, who it's going to benefit, what the outcome might be. Try taking a stab at talking about it like you would to your friends or family. Focus on the outcome. Focus on what will be possible when whatever it is that you're working on will be accomplished. Think to the future. You can do do a tweet from the future, go forward in a year or two, think about what might be awesome about the product you're going to launch. Write a little tweet about it and see what, get inside the user. Oh, I love blah, 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 because I can do X, Y, Z. Make it fun. That's a cool idea. That's a little design technique. Another design thinking that I like to use is lightning demos, but it's really just analogous comparisons. So get used to finding the awesome in other products, even ones that aren't related to your own particular industry. So you can say, for example, use what's the Airbnb of our product, or what's the Instant Pot of our product? Well, what's great about Instant Pot? Well, it's pretty versatile, it's quite powerful, but it's easy to use, and you get pretty good food out of it. It's fairly good quality. So how would those type of universal benefits be translated into your product? You exercise your muscles, get used to spotting those types of things in other products. I love using how might we. If you have, turn everything into a question. If you have a problem like, say, our workplace isn't creative, a good how might we on that theme might be, well, how might we nourish staff creativity at work? A great technique to pair with how might we is why. Just keep asking why. How might we nourish staff creativity at work? Might become, well, and I'm just, this is a rhetorical example. Let's pretend I'm in a nice little group of people that are all asking these questions. Why do we want to nourish staff creativity at work? Well, we want our staff to, provide good ideas that will help our products out. Well, yeah, but why do we really want to do that? We could, offer a consultant. Well, our creative, our staff, or our brain power, star power. We want to, encourage them, make the culture better for them, perhaps. Culture. So maybe culture is important for creativity. Yeah, maybe. So maybe it's something like helping them feel like they can express themselves and be genuine. These are all the types of ways that you get into little logic trees of things that are connected to how might we help employees feel comfortable expressing themselves so that they know that their ideas are valued along with unconventional thought. Creativity is also about tolerance of other people's ideas and not making them feel like children, that they have importance and meaning and value. It's also good to set some constraints. I don't know about you. I'm a bit of a procrastinator. Oddly, becoming a mom has put a great deal of focus on the level of time I have. If I don't know if my daughter's going to sleep for 30 minutes or 2 hours or 15 minutes, and I can shower, get a snack, do a bit of cleaning, something in about 10 minutes and do it pretty well. Good is better than perfect. And as Dolly says, don't fear perfection. You'll never reach it. But it's not just about like having just good enough, but it's about giving yourself some focal points. So in a product sense, it might be something like persona demographic information. One of the challenges we have at CNN is we have a lot of users, and some of the teams I've coached have struggled to even get started because they think of millions and millions of people. They think about the 15 different ways that they're coming to this particular experience, and we spend the first 15 minutes sometimes with more junior teams and so forth, trying to get them to agree on, look, let's just pick a couple people that we're just using as a theoretical example. You can't please everybody. You have to kind of have a little bit of discrimination. In other words, don't try to clean the whole house. Otherwise, you'll just probably sit there doing nothing. So get that going. Another related technique might be adding a sense of urgency. I love using the time timer in product brainstorming sessions and design thinking sessions. If you've never used one, I really recommend it. I think they're pretty expensive, but I think it's like $15 or $20. But when you spin it, you actually see like a delta of how much time is remaining. So it's great to give yourself, keep yourself focused. Okay, I've got 45 minutes to finish what I'm doing. The Pomodoro technique, I don't personally use this, but I've heard about it and it kind of makes sense. If anybody else does and wants to talk about it, I'd love to hear what you think. Francesco Cirillo, obviously an Italian, Pomodoro, of course, is tomato in Italian. And it is a technique in which you set very small little time boxes, like 25 minutes, and then you take a 5-minute break. And you can have 4 Pomodoros and then take a longer break and so forth. But it's a way of really avoiding that like 10-hour, I had 15 cups of coffee and I haven't really done anything, type of thing that sometimes happens. Another thought is like the National Novel Writing Month. It's similar like project. What could you maybe do in a week or a month? But again, just having a little bit of that constraint, that focus. Don't do it alone, collaborate, find people that you enjoy working with, find people that get excited with you. It's amazing how much you can do if you just are with someone that you trust, that you feel you don't have to defend yourself to, because if you begin defending yourself, that's because you doubt yourself, because you think they doubt you. If you work with people that you respect you, so much more is possible. It reduces all that friction. So think about what all of us have shared, or what we could potentially share, what our journeys, what have we been doing for the past 15, 20 years, all those different experiences, and what they could bring to bear in that regard. And to that end, think about our users too. Sometimes I think we kind of insult our users at times. I'm sure you all don't, those are of you that are in UX, but sometimes other people in our org that are, they kind of take them for granted. They think of them as metrics, just another number and something to convert. Think about how you felt about the music that you heard. Those are our people. We're all humans. We're creative. We have rich, deep feelings and experiences, particularly now with what's going on in COVID and other issues of the day. So yeah, don't go it alone, and think about your user. To that end, I have not spent a lot of time researching this, but I did go to a meetup in New York where I took part in a liberating structure forum, and I have read a little bit about it. It's kind of taking a little bit of the agile retrospective template and kind of going even further with it. It's really pretty cool. If you haven't heard of it, I suggest it. The example that you've got to the right there is called Troika Consulting, which is actually one of the techniques I used as well in the meetup. And it's like using groups of three where you pair between being I have a problem and then I'm a consultant, but you actually turn away. So you give your problem to two people, then you turn away and they talk about it, and you just listen and take notes. They don't talk to you, they just talk about it. And then you turn around and there's some other stuff that goes on. But they're a little quirky. It's kind of, I can't exactly summarize them, but they're all like that. They're all very interesting. And they're a fabulous way to group. And they have a Slack. They're responding to the virtualness of our work. So they have like a Slack area where you can talk. And some of these techniques have been used to like radically transform hospital hygiene, even before COVID, because it gets people to stop accepting the status quo. They would get like nurses and other people that perhaps felt a bit uncomfortable speaking in front of a doctor, but they were unleashing everybody's ideas. So this is a really powerful technique, and I really suggest it. So in short, creativity is really just about liberating yourself. Don't take too much, don't take too much stock in crippling expectations and in fears of failure and other fears. Sometimes the logic that seems to be conventional is anything but. And I know that's difficult in a corporate environment in particular. And you have to kind of balance and maybe take this with a grain of salt and use what is appropriate. But it's almost like companies that allow for that 20% time. Maybe just take like 5%, 10%, X amount of time in your day to really just detach from all of the expectations that you have at work and other things that you think might be restricting you, and get into the habit of being creative. How might I solve this problem? How might we, what's possible in the future? What might be awesome 2 years from now? What would that be like as a tweet for my product? Free yourself of bias. The Black Lives Matter movement has been an important reminder again about bias, whether conscious or not. I underwent unconscious bias training at SoundCloud. They had a need for that. It was skewed very European and white male at the office in Berlin that I worked at, and they had a great opportunity to just give people a feeling like some of the things that we take for granted in our experiences that we're just not checking in ourselves. And it doesn't necessarily come from a place of a bad place or a bad intention, but it's just lack of awareness. But so again, pair yourself with other people that have been on a different journey. Don't be afraid of ambiguity. Nothing in life is certain. I think we know that for certain. The only thing you can be certain of. So embrace it. And that's part of the agile mindset. We embrace, we respond to change, and the more quickly and elegantly we do that, the better our products are. Don't be so concerned about the need to control the outcome or leap into a solution. That's another thing. Start with the why. Keep the why front of mind. The why and for whom. Don't get into the how and the what until you really know what that why is, and you have a hypothesis that you can start iterating with. And finally, think like a child. The grown-up inhibitions that we have, we're jaded, we're tired, we're just try to keep a little part of that self of you alive. If you heard me play Mario, I love playing Mario, and when I was in bands, I would sometimes play pieces of Mario and things from between like instrument changes and tuning and stuff. We had a lot of tuning we had to do sometimes, and everybody loved that the most, and I thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, that's really the way we are. So Don't put a grown-up expectation on yourself. Let yourself play with what you want to do. So I really just want to reinforce how creative I know you are and how much more creative you can be if you put your mind to it. You can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have. Maya Angelou interviewed, so Bell Telephone Magazine used to have these quarterlies in the 80s, back when telephones were the innovation that we all, used. But they did a series on speakers and people that had been exceptionally creative and innovative. I don't know if you know this, I didn't. Maya Angelou was also she was a dancer. She was a musician. She wrote some soundtracks. She danced and performed on stage, in addition to being, a wonderful writer and poet and so forth. So she did a lot, so much. And so I want to close with the thought from her around there has to be a climate in which new ways of thinking, perceiving, and questioning are encouraged. People also have to feel that they are needed. And that's really gets back to that feeling of, if you don't feel like you're valued or trusted, or that you have to defend yourself, you may struggle with creativity. So work on those relationships with your coworkers, with collaborators that you may or may not be forced to work with, and make some exciting things happen. Speaking of exciting things in culture, I feel like I'm very lucky to work somewhere where I can be as creative as I want. And CNN is one of those places. So we have UX roles, we have product roles. They're not all in Atlanta, DC, New York. Right now we're virtual. In fact, I work from St. Petersburg, and I commute to Atlanta when time in non-COVID times. So we're doing a lot of really cool things, and we'd love to have you join us there. So learn more at warnermedias.com, warnermediacareers.com. And with that, I just want to reemphasize, you are creative and magical. Thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure talking with you tonight.
Excellent. Thanks, Laura.
No worries. I will stop sharing.
Fantastic. Let me put up everybody's handles again. I'm never going to get the knack of Zoom when I use WebEx all day. Hold on. Let's see. That. All right, there's everybody's handle. So, questions for Laura. Alex, what do we have?
Yep, that's good. Thanks, guys. So Jim, when you did that, it took all my questions away. But anyways, we'll start with one. This comes from Ling Young. So thank you, Laura, for making a point about diversity. Other than relying on open-minded individual design decisions, how can corporations support greater diversity of thinking and perspective in the workforce? Great question.
That was a great question. I don't want to be the only person answering that. When I worked at SoundCloud, I felt like they really led the way in that. I was part of Queer Clouders, which was our LGBTQ work resource group. And then there were others in the company too. And they really, I want to take a moment because we had some trans individuals in our workspace, and they lobbied for things like, gender neutral bathroom signage, things like that. And we're very open about talking about it, sort of helping us better understand things from their point of view. And so the company made it very clear that they endorsed it. So I think, first of all, having, company endorsement, Warner Media too has responded very, in my opinion, very, of course, my opinion, I don't know, but I feel like they also took time to support the Black Lives Matter group. During the month of June, they made a lot of content available so we could learn more about experiences of people of color, and they doubled the employee matching to a couple of all charities that related to Black Lives Matter, but a couple, especially with like headquarters in Atlanta where John Lewis is from, and there's a cultural center in Atlanta. So I think just encouraging people to do good, to learn, endorsing it, making space for people to talk and to share. We had Friday demos that they converted into some forums for diversity and for people that wanted to speak on those topics, and doing respectfully, but basically making it clear that they endorsed all of those viewpoints. I think that was very important. I don't know if anybody else has things they want to share on that in that regard. I
mean, I would just add that it's such an important topic, and it's a great thing for you and folks that might report to you to talk about, for your teams to talk about. And now you see large companies, including AT&T and Warner Media, we all work for, setting this up as goals at the top level of the organization, saying, listen, this is really, really important to us. And that sends a powerful message to an organization that this actually matters deeply to us as a company. But anybody else have thoughts or suggestions or experiences with it? All right.
Just
Another
quick thing.
okay.
Sorry, I don't know if I'm not on video right now. To kind of, to Jim's point, I think what has, I would say sometimes been an issue in the past and is something that I think leaders and managers need to really, really examine is follow through and actually, taking action when something happens and really responding. I know as a woman coming up in a technical field, or maybe even not a technical field, it just sometimes you encounter things that you report. And then for many years, I think we put up with a lot of stuff because somebody was like a high performer. I know in some cases, I've been able to personally have conversations with people and resolve situations where they didn't realize how hard they were coming across or how they were coming across. But then other times there are people that you find out have repeated incidents and nothing happens. So, I really think walking the walk and not just talking the talk,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very important.
Yeah.
I think also in the sense of like the actual creative circumstances, you might be working with people in a room as a facilitator and as somebody in the room, speak up if something has been said that doesn't really feel right. I was pregnant at work. I never really had anything happen, but I remember at airports, I had people that would kind of, like trying to touch the belly, things like that, just things that you just would never do. You should never do that, but they just didn't know. It came from a place of innocence. It's like being aware of that. And also, as a woman in tech, I try to be an ally. I try to back up people that I feel's voice might be underserved. And as a facilitator, making sure people have equal space and equal voice. That's one of the Agile principles too, is that kind of sense of democratic feeling.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for Christy for joining in. And Laura, there's a couple more questions I'd like to get to. This comes from Jess Rubenstein. You might know her.
Jess.
What's your favorite liberating structure and why?
Gosh, I only saw a couple. The Troika one was pretty cool. That was the one I did. It's pretty simple. Some of them are a little bit more complicated. But what I liked about it was that just turning around. So as I explained, you have somebody has a problem, one person has a problem, then two people, they talk about the problem and you turn your back and they talk behind your back, literally. And the way that you hear them, it's different. You're looking out into the room instead of at them. And then they're not looking at you either. So that's just one example of how it really shifts your brain. It takes away some of the normalcy that we use in communication. So I liked that one. There's 1, 2, 4 more, which is kind of a way of getting people. Have you ever asked a question of a group and nobody talks? This type of thing is where you maybe get somebody to think about the question asked on their own, then they pair with someone, they talk about how they feel about it, then they get 2 more people, you have 4 people. And then when you've all talked about it as a sort of a group of 4, then they go around the room and talk about the results. So that's another great, simple little thing. Those are the only 2 I remember. If anyone else has done these and is more of a, more familiar with them, feel free to let us know.
That's awesome. Thank you, Laura. A few more questions here. I want to make sure I want to get to a lot of the questions that are flying in. This comes from Jamie, or Jamie, JMI. Sorry for not pronouncing it right. How did you create, implement this creative culture at CNN? How did you decide on the timeline for progress?
That's a great question. And I I must profess, I don't think I have all the answers. A lot of that was laid in a foundation before I joined. Another fellow AOLer, Rohit Agarwal, is the chief product officer, and he has done a lot to lay the foundations. But a timeline, I think it's more about raising awareness, and I think helping people feel comfortable and safe to talk about it, to talk about being creative. We have a lot of pressure on us around the organization in different ways. We've got like news events. You can imagine, the pressure that is on teams to deliver and fix things. So just trying to help people understand that they can take time, usually, to focus on discovery, and helping them feel comfortable with that. That's just a very brief little thing, but it's about learning and value, not just about the output. That's what we're really trying to focus on.
Yeah, that's great. And I would say Jim and I and could probably share a little bit about CNN progress. And certainly, Jamie, if you would like to unpack a little more, feel free to reach out to me, Laura, or Jim a little more if you want to unpack that. I do want to get to more questions here. So this comes from Robert. Great presentation, Laura. Your point about how big ideas take time to percolate is an important one, time to wonder. Any thoughts on how people can allow themselves and their teams time to wonder, and when so many teams feel under corporate pressure to produce?
That's a great question. I think a little bit of it has to be led by management. I think sometimes, especially if you're in a larger organization, you might need to get kind of the blessing, the okay, the comfort zone from your manager. But I think it can happen in small little ways. Think of all the things that we waste our time on. We can, if it was really important, you can find an hour to talk with somebody. So maybe a little Slack chat. I've created a discovery community of practice channel in CNN, but something like that, where you can get like-minded people across the organization too. I know you talked about your team, but utilizing other people's viewpoints can be powerful too, and connecting others. So make the time, prioritize it, find advocates, find managers that will support it, and find methods to share that information.
That's great. Thank you, Laura. Great question. Next one. This comes from Iva. I like the idea of time to wonder, but how do you gauge how much wonder time is enough? It kind of touches on that a little bit, but I guess this maybe kind of specifies more towards an individual level.
I think it would really have to be, I'd have to know more about your user and your if you're kind of starting with a brand new idea, something like a design sprint could be great, just a week to really get suffused in your product space and your user and come up with some ideas. Once you kind of have that framework, the wandering that you take, you're going to be constantly thinking about, and that's a great idea. That's a great answer to the previous question as well. You're going to always have time. Once you're in that headspace, I'm thinking about the stuff I'm doing for work all the time, with some exceptions, but it's constantly, that's the whole point. That's the creativity. That's like any little, ooh, that random thing over there that I saw yesterday, and oh, that thing I'm seeing right now. That's how it connects in your brain. And that's why you need that context of who your user is.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. This comes from Aaron Booker. How much time do you devote to developing creativity outside of your main 9 to 5?
Less than I should, more than I did, but I think I was kind of a musical prodigy growing up. I started playing piano when I was about 2. I played stuff off the TV that I heard, and I think that kind of set me up for a feeling of crippling expectation. Not that my parents pressured me, but I think there was always this assumption that I would be a pianist, and I did go to school, and I have classically trained background, but I got into video games out of college, and I loved it so much, and I realized I was free to just do and explore whatever I wanted. Now I'm actually looking into writing. I've got some speculative fiction ideas that I've got around like automated hotels, things like that. I love Ursula Le Guin. I'd love to write like her. Stephen King. Got some other ideas around tabletop board game type stuff based on Stephen King. So I'm trying to find time with a kid. The full-time job, it's not easy, but I just try to make it incremental. Just do the littlest part I can. Trello boards or Kanban boards are great for that too.
Nice. This comes from Scott. Hey, Laura, how do you recover when your creativity is critiqued too heavily or negatively?
I think some of that comes with age in a way. I feel like I'm a little more seasoned and calm than I would be. I try to disconnect the emotion I feel and try to not take it too personally. I also try to be a little bit of a catalyst. And actually that's what I love about my role, is that I am a little more of a catalyst. I have ideas about our process and so forth, but I'm not in that product hot seat where I have to be kind of making some important decisions. That can be quite grueling. And so in a sense, that's why I have a great degree of empathy for the people that are doing that. But my passion in product is the people in the organization that I'm working with. I think just trying to switch your brain off and come from another space, maybe wait, don't send that angry email if it's a personal attack, and just kind of come back to it when you have more context.
Awesome frame. Thank you, Laura. This comes from Frank's Rubin. How did you find your job? Question mark. With a music background and background music. Well,
it took a lot of hard work, but I feel like I've always been a pretty good writer and communicator. As I said, I had a classical piano degree. I even transferred from Virginia Tech, where I was minoring in English, to a full-on piano conservatory in England, and literally, but that was also part of it. By moving around a lot, I was exposed to different points of view, and especially overseas, which isn't to detract anything from the American education system, of which I am partially a product. John Lewis High School, Springfield, Virginia. I want to, in Britain, I was encouraged to defend my rationale, my viewpoint. I would say, oh, Mozart is idiomatic, hunting motifs or something, like, oh, that type of stuff. And they'd be like, well, what makes it idiomatic? Why, and you'd have to be like, oh, I can't just repeat what I learned for rote. So that was one thing. And then, as I said, I got into video games through a music-based application that I was, and so suddenly I'm making software and driving discs around to PlayStation Magazine. This is before FTP and stuff, really glamorous. Working with like Ubisoft, Bitmap Brothers, some of the greats of British gaming. And from that, I got into AOL, and that was kind of like a big finishing school. I worked with people like Jim and Alex and Jody and Robert and others that were all awesome, on top of the game. And we had great leaders and great managers. And we were, kind of the Google of the day. Everybody kind of jokes about it, but so many of the innovations we have in the internet were pioneered or patented at AOL. So I'm proud of what I learned there. And that really set me up for everything. So it's all what I've learned, in personal experience.
Awesome. And one final quick question from Ling again. How do you keep yourself accountable to see the job through after you have generated great ideas? It's a great one.
That is a great one. And that's actually something I think I could do a little better at. It's wonderful having these like lovely ideas and stuff, but yeah, how do you see it through and check back? I think there's some success metrics you can set, and some of them may vary per team, but how will we know that we're successful? If you're talking about things like product market fit, there's ways that, adoption rates and other techniques that you can use that I think it plays into it. I'm actually in the process of developing some metrics for myself of how my efforts will help others beyond just helping them have a design sprint or be a little more honest in their retrospectives. So yeah, that's a great question, something I haven't necessarily cracked myself.
Awesome. I think one final quick question, this came from a collective here, is like, what are some of your favorite ways to overcome a creative block?
I like to stand up. If I'm struggling with an email or a thought, I stand up, walk around. That's a great one. Get into a good mood, like, go for a walk, go for a run, play with your pet or your loved one, or, don't play with your loved one, you know what I mean? Spend time with people that love and care about you. Just enjoy something. Just take yourself out of the headspace that you're in. Get that tortoise brain to show its little head and pop out and help you out.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Really, thank you for your time, and certainly thank you for the group for joining us. And I do want to give a quick shout out to Jane for joining us. Hey, Jane.
Wait, I'm gonna unmute her. There you go. Does that work?
Hey, how are you? It's beautiful here in North Carolina.
Welcome. Thank you. So good to see you. So Jane was an instrumental team member and contributor and co-organizer of NoVA UX for a number of years. So Jane, thank you for joining us. It's been a while.
Yeah, but you guys always do a great program. So.
Thanks. Excellent. So let's see. Laura, thank you so much. That was such a terrific talk. Thank you everybody for joining us this evening. Next month's event, as I said, is September 23rd. Navy Federal, our friends at Navy Federal will be talking about inclusive design, and that event is posted on the NoVA UX meetup page, so you can RSVP there. And don't forget to register for the Zoom, so you get all the the meetup, the meeting link, and that good stuff. If anybody has feedback for us or is interested in giving a talk, or panel or workshop or whatever you might like, we'd love to hear from you. So please reach out to us through the meetup website. Laura, I have some playoff music for you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Sounds
Ready?
awesome. Yep.
There you go.
Oh, that was amazing. Thank you. We'll have to do a duet next time.
There you go. Hey everybody, thanks everyone for joining us this evening, and we will see everyone next month. This video will be posted on the YouTube channel. Give us a couple days. We have to render it and all that good stuff. But thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Have a good evening.